Hi there, Will here, and today I'd like to show you something that I think you might find quite interesting. It's in this snazzy looking Mamiya case with slight use damage, I guess. Inside this lovely case is the relatively rare, quite hard to come by, and excessively expensive Mamiya RB67 37mm f4.5 fisheye lens. Now, as a result of this lens's expense, I do not personally own it. It has kindly been lent to me by the folks over at Skit Cameras. I'm not sure if that makes this video sponsored by them, but I do recommend using them if you'd like to buy some camera gear in Cape Town or rent some camera gear, because they have an excellent selection of very interesting things. I reckon one can ask the same questions of this lens as I did of my 500mm lens in that video, which is, why does it exist and why would one want to buy it? Like the 500mm, I reckon that this fisheye is a very specific use lens with a distinctive look. Its main applications would probably be things like fashion photography, and generally, I guess, wide angles are useful for interiors and architecture shots, but this one has some downfalls in that department. The one big benefit it has over the 500mm though, that I can tell you straight away, is that it is not quite as cumbersome to use and get onto the camera. This just plonks on like a normal lens. You do need to be careful not to scratch the front element because it is absolutely gigantic and sticks out beyond the actual rim of the metal here, which is why it has these 4 prongs, but besides that it goes on easy and you're kind of good to go. This lens is so wide, in fact, that if you want to use filters on it, you need to get special filters that mount to the back, the rear element of the lens. And in fact, if that filter, this UV filter, wasn't on the back of the lens right now, it wouldn't be able to focus properly because the glass of the filter is actually part of how this camera manages to throw its focus. The case itself actually has a storage compartment for the special filters that one needs to use with this lens. You can see that's where they would live if there were any. There are some known issues with this lens which I stumbled upon over the last few years looking into it because I've wanted to own this lens for that long. Namely, it has problems with chromatic aberration and lens smearing towards the edges. It's very sharp in the center of the frame. In fact, most people liken it to like a 90mm in terms of the center frame sharpness, but as one gets further out, it loses sharpness, as is often the case with fisheye lenses. It wasn't the case for the 16mm hologon that I used in a previous video, but to be honest and to give you a baseline, I don't think this lens is even nearly comparable to that lens, because that hologon is magic, and this is well, maybe somewhat magic, but it's definitely not hologon quality. As a result of my doubts about its quality, I decided that the best thing I could do with it would be to photograph some friends to give you examples of how the lens renders. So here are some photos of my friends who happen to be models. I need my light meter. Come check out the frame. It's just you two like sitting eating dinner, so it'll get like both of you in there and then have the whole scene. If Geenah's like looking towards the lens and you can be looking at her, you can have like your feet sort of across each other like you did before. Pushing button, not the picture. 3, 2, 1. Why did that not flash? It's okay because the exposure should actually be sort of what it needs to be for the scene. This thing was giving me issues before as well. That sinks. We'll try it again. Push the button, not the picture. 3, 2, 1. There we go. Lean sort of across towards each other. Like not like you're gonna kiss or anything, just like you're having an intense conversation. Okay, I'm gonna push the button. Hopefully nothing's gonna happen. Okay, now laugh.
I don't know.
Why can't you laugh? There we go.
I'm pretty sure I blinked.
It's okay. It doesn't matter. Maybe that. I'm just gonna change my film back quick.
You look funny to you?
Do I look funny to you?
You both look funny to me, so. Okay, I'm gonna move you two here, and we'll have this as the background. Dun, 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 dun. Saves me the trouble of setting up an actual background. Wasn't lying about this thing being wide, eh? It definitely is a wide-angle lens. In fact, it's so wide that you can focus onto the glass of the lens. I could have my nose touching the glass and it would focus to where my nose is touching the glass. It would focus beyond that, actually. I think you can focus on the elements inside the lens, which is interesting. And its rendering is very interesting too, because I'm pretty sure I'm going to be in frame when all that really technically looks like it should be in frame is my torso. With regards to its pitfalls that I mentioned earlier though, the chromatic aberration is quite apparent. I'll show you in this picture of Jono and Geenah in the store. Towards the edges you can see it start to sort of get a bit hairy in terms of chromatic aberration. And the lens smearing is also apparent. It's apparent in that picture and this one of the snapdragon flowers. Towards the edges you can see it's just sort of like, it blurs. It almost looks like bokeh, which means, I guess it isn't that bad, technically. Like as a fashion lens, it doesn't matter if it has some blur towards the edges because what you're going to be photographing is the center subject. Architecture-wise, definitely absolutely useless because you'd want the architecture, A, to not be like super distorted, but B, if it was distorted, you'd want it to be sharp border to border. The chromatic aberration wouldn't matter for black and white photography though, so. Let's see if I can show you what it looks like at minimum focusing distance. I took a portrait of my friend like this actually, but I'm almost touching the lens and I should actually still have some facial features. The other bummer I had with this lens though was that the PC port was rusted up or tarnished a bit, so it misfired every now and again, but that's not a total disaster and it can be fixed. Overall though, this is a very specific use lens, just like the 500mm that I spoke about before, and I don't think I can justify buying it, especially with what they cost. I strongly considered buying this one when it popped up actually. Chris, who owns it now, gave me the option to do so until he owned it, and it's just as well because whilst I would have been very excited to own a rare lens like this with interesting rendering, I can just use it via skid cameras now, and it's just too much for what it is. Like if I was a high-end fashion photographer and I wanted to make work that is of the now, because fisheyes are making a bit of a comeback, then it would be a good investment. But for me, right now, not really worth it. I'm trying to buy a car, you see, and this would have put a significant dent in my car budget. Anyway, I hope that this has provided you with some insights into an interesting lens and that you have a bit of a more informed opinion on its function and look now. I've refreshed my print store for the month, so for the next month these are going to be the prints that are on it, and if you'd like to pick one up, you're more than welcome to. Shipping worldwide. Besides that though, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next week.